ready to go on our trip from Weymouth to Malo via
Plymouth and Roscoff. So
right.
We've got several days on the English side and then a week on the French side. And we're really looking forward to having a break.
And we've got lovely weather.
Of course.
So,
off we go.
bye.
Bye.
Starting our epic journey from the arrivals hall at the Condor Ferry. I'm now cycling away from the arrivals hall towards the Weymouth pavilion. I'm going to take us on the route which we would use as local people to start this ride and to exit the Weymouth town centre, as we're now approaching the Weymouth beach, or the first sign which says to Old Harbour North for pedestrians, because this involves crossing the Weymouth railway lines which serve the port, or used to serve the port. They haven't been used for several years now, unfortunately, and I'm following the one-way system towards the town. Here I'm going to take a first left into Pilgrim's Way. Morning. And this brings us on to the Weymouth Quay, and in front of us you can see we've got a very large yacht just getting ready for the sea. Now when we get to this point, we've got railway lines in the street. Now it's very important that you do not, and I emphasise do not, get your wheels caught in them, because if you do, you will almost certainly fall off. At this point we're going to ignore the traffic cut lines, because otherwise we would have to cross the railway again, and we're not going to do that. I'm going to stay on this road, come down here. I've got a van coming the other way, so I'm going to actually cross into this part on the right, the whole object being to avoid as much as possible the railway lines. We're near to the inner harbour now, with the yachts getting ready to go in. When we get to this point, directly ahead of us, we're going to take the left fork, as the cyclist in front is doing, to go beside the harbour. But before we do that, again, we have to cross the railway lines. Despite the fact that the van's there, I'm now doing this at right angles, and we're now on to the harbour walk. Always, as we've got four pedestrians coming towards us, we go slowly and carefully, there's no conflict, and just ring my bell. And emerging onto Western Bridge, which is the point where the routes from the coastal route divides from the route which is slightly inland for our trip. We go very slowly here because it's actually a blind exit. Turn left and stop. Now at this point, if you plan to do the coastal route and go to Fleet, you need to go straight on and through a subway. If you plan to do the inland route, which is what we're going to do, you need to turn right through the wooden stakes just there. Starting the inland route, I'll keep the video running while we go through the cycleway past the Weymouth Swannery on the left. We just have to be a bit careful with these people making their way to the beach on Good Friday. no accounting for anybody with a white line in the middle, because they're always bound to be on the wrong side of it. And we're going to cut through the middle of the car park, but in better times there will be a cycle route around the car park. We're now back on the pavement cycleway, which will take us out of town to the north. We're currently on the Dorchester Road, but we're now going to turn left just before that yellow sign and go down a lovely country lane, Waterloo Lane, and from now on, for most of the rest of today anyway, we'll be off busy roads. We're just descending past the old mill buildings down towards the River Wey, now only perhaps 2 kilometres or less from its source, which is at the Upway. Suddenly, as I say, the world is returned to sanity. We're just approaching the Wishing Well Cafe at Upway on our left, a little art gallery also on the left, and a church straight ahead. This cafe is one of our favourite places as cyclists. We stop here very often. Now after this, we've got really the first hill of the day. Fortunately, it's fairly short, because we're not going to go over the downs but skirt them on the seaside side. So this is just a little climb over the first bumps. We're now on the Friar Wadden Road, which is this lovely little lane that wanders along from Upway to Portisham, avoiding the dreadful main road to Bridport. It's very typical of the kind of lanes that you'll find in much of inland Dorset. Fairly hilly, but also very beautiful. Just over 10. Well, I've just reached the top of Portisham Hill, and like most leisure cyclists, I walked up a good deal of it. Looking to the left is the wonderful Breedy Valley, which is overlooked by almost everybody, but is virtually unchanged in a century, or at least it feels that way. Just coming up ahead of us, we've got the Sustrand cycle route sign, number 2, and then we have this steep descent down into the valley. On too much because of the risks of burning out the tyres on these small wheels. Do faded braking, that's quite hard braking. Well, that's the big hill done, but we've still got a long way to go, which is pretty much all downhill. I'll just leave the video on for a few minutes because we come along this beautiful little lane, which is typical of the roads we'll be on for much of the next sort of, I don't know, 5 to 6k. There's a British cricket pitch on the left. On the right hand side ahead you can see the stratas on the hill, which have been worn by generations of sheep walking along the hill. we're now at Long Breedy, I think. Long Breedy, Anne? Little Breedy, just sitting underneath a tree having a drink before we go down the rest of the Breedy Valley to West Bay, where hopefully we'll have some lunch. This is where we leave the Sustrand route. We're just at the bottom of the Breedy Valley and about 5 kilometres from Bridport, maybe a bit more. And the Sustrans route actually turns right off the Breedy Valley and goes up this rather beautiful lane, but there are some very steep hills up there. It then goes round on lanes to the north of Bridport, where we will join it again. It's a rather lovely ride, but we think it's a bit hillier than we would like. And in addition to that, we'd like to go down to West Bay, which is the seaside for Bridport, to get some lunch and to see a bit of seaside. Anyway, here's Anne just catching me up. She comes along waving to the camera, which is nice. And unfortunately, to do this we're going to have to go onto the main road for a couple of miles. But there she goes. Hello.
So much for being able to keep up with you.
Ah, well, it was mainly downhill.
Yep, it was.
We came down the main road for a couple of miles, very unpleasant, and but it has enabled us to get to this harbour, which is at West Bay. Until we come to the rather spectacular cliffs looking east. We're now cycling down the old railway path from West Bay to Bridport. Sounds Route 2. It's got to be a link into the Route 2, which actually goes to north of the town. It's a very pleasant way of doing at least part of the route between West Bay and Bridport. Now coming into central Bridport, which was once a rope making town, which is why the street's so wide, because they used to run the ropes down the street and I think twist it. In the centre there is the well, it looks to me like a market house, and there's a reasonable range of shops here if you need to buy things. Let's go slowly just in case the lights change and we can go without stopping, but I shouldn't think there's much chance. Oh yes, there we go. We turn left here. This is the main street of the town. Which is quite pleasantly pretty. This is an example of an ancient lane. You see on both sides how the traffic has eroded the banks so that we're down at this level. It's also an example of quite a big uphill, which is making me puff. We're now cycling on the concrete road and past Denham, and we're continuing with no sign of any gates or anything to prevent us continuing through. As we came along the road past this signpost, we came across this rather pleasant looking pub, the Five Bells, at
Whitchurch Canonicorum.
Videoing this because of the banks of bluebells which we've been passing for a long time now as we're going on towards our bed and breakfast. And that's my last video of the day. Just under 60 kilometres, just under 38 miles.